I never really thought about how many games involved just zombies and vehicles until I started writing this script for this review. I couldn't even think of a catchy way to grab anybody's attention in the first sentence. Then, I started thinking, is Zombie Driver the only game that has you killing zombies with only your vehicle? So I started looking it up. And I'm not talking about just regular zombie games where you can get out of your vehicle and take out a weapon. I'm talking about a game where it's only your vehicle being the only thing that can actually take out the zombies. After a quick search, I found that only a few games have done this type of genre, and they seem to be flash and mobile games. It seems like this is the only game to also be released on both Android and console. Today, I'm going to review Zombie Driver HD. The game was developed by Exor Studios and released the original Zombie Driver in 2009 for the Android, which seems to have been removed as of 2019, and Steam. It was then re-released for the 360 and Steam in 2012 under the name of Zombie Driver HD, with the PS3 version releasing a few months later. The Ouya version released the next year, and the year after that re-released as the Ultimate Edition for the Xbox One. And finally, in July 25th, 2019, it's re-released for the Nintendo Switch as Zombie Driver Immortal Edition. I can say this for the developers, they have a lot of faith with this game. I can't remember when I picked up the original version, but I think it may have been bundled with other horror games. It even had a summer Steam event tied to it, which I think involved getting a gold car. It's been that long. I remember that it was enjoyable, and when I found out about the HD version, I decided to wait on it. Well, I think that wait went a bit longer than I anticipated because I kind of forgot about it. And just last week, it went free for a few days. So I grabbed it, and after a few more days, I played through it in pretty much one day. It really isn't that long of a game. It pretty much just took me about 4.5 hours to complete it. And that's with all the side objectives included. Alright, so I'm going to talk about the story, so if anyone doesn't want spoilers, I recommend skipping to this point in the video. We begin with a chemical blast explosion. So pretty much how many zombie apocalypse scenarios begin with. We're asked by the army to go and rescue as many civilians as we can. Most of the game is just going out and saving whoever the army deems is necessary to save. Usually civilians.
You, taxi driver? Yes, I'm talking to you. Just kidding, man. Thanks for the rescue.
Doctors.
Thank God. Rescue at last. Our ambulance driver was eaten by one of those big zombies outside. Here, take his keys to the ambulance and get us out of here.
Students.
Hey man, the land party at the campus took a bit longer than expected, and suddenly all of the people in the city turned into zombies. It's just like a video game. If only we could get some guns, it would be so awesome.
And even some drunk sailors.
Why'd you have guns on your car? Is this some kind of joke? With all these scarecrows walking strange? I want to go back to the ship.
As time goes on, you get more and more background on just who this corporation is and what they were doing with the city. And yes, it's just corporation. They have no actual name. You only get clues on just who this group is while saving all these people. As you go along, the number of survivors and zombies increase, and trust me, the zombie population spikes hard. You aren't stuck with the taxi for too long though, as you receive new vehicles and weaponry during missions. There are some missions where you are forced to use specific vehicles that either haul large containers, destroy certain areas, and even put out fires. As time goes on, you see just how bad the plague becomes, introducing some boss fights during your taxi services. Eventually, instead of rescuing civilians, you start rescuing some officials,
Where's our official
actual emergency pacification team.
Veterinarians, specifically one with a cat,
I have the living dead cat right here in this cage. Watch out! It scratched you. Next time, be more careful. It's a savage animal.
and finally, the scientists who work for said corporation, as they stayed long enough to gather data on everything that was happening.
I almost thought they were gonna leave us here. Can't believe they made you do all of their work. You look a bit strange.
It starts becoming obvious that the army you're helping out is also working with the corporation. Granted, it's pretty obvious early on when the mission briefing has a censored word in it. Afterwards, they have you defeat a large mutant in the park, where they decide to plant a mini-nuke to destroy the city. And unfortunately, they leave you behind. So with only so little time, you have to escape the city before it explodes, which tests all your skills and navigation to get to the only exit out of the city. Unfortunately, due to a run-in with a temperamental and undead cat, the escape was all for nothing. And that's the story. It's not a happy ending, and honestly, it's kind of refreshing to go through a game where the main character is actually forced to die, due to the circumstances of what he's been forced to go through. So enough about the story. What about the other game modes? The first game mode we'll discuss is Blood Race, where you can choose to either do a tournament or a single race. Starting tournament will allow you to do a 4-course at the lowest difficulty, all the way up to 8 courses on the highest. Each race also has its own modes, which are Race, Elimination, and Endurance. Race is exactly what it is, except you can destroy the other vehicles to slow them down. Elimination is pretty much Race, but you're going after the drivers instead, getting kills for the gold. The last on the list is Endurance, where you have to race the clock before your vehicle explodes, and you can keep the timer going by hitting checkpoints, destroying destructibles, and eliminating zombies in your path. Doing tournaments is also the only way you can unlock new difficulties in Blood Race, and also unlock the alternate skins for every vehicle. The second mode is Slaughter, which is pretty much just survival. You need to get kills to increase your score, and every wave you complete grants you a different upgrade to keep you alive during this mode. Gameplay in Zombie Driver is pretty simple. You drive with the directional keys and you fire and boost with the mouse. Granted, you can use the keyboard to also do these things. It just feels natural for me to use the mouse. The driving in the game feels different for every vehicle, which I do like, since a fast car needs to feel slippery, while a large vehicle needs to have some weight to it. Even though the game is in a top-down perspective, don't think that you won't go flying off at high speeds. I've had some very strange moments during my playthrough. Now, the enemies in the game aren't really just a basic zombie. Okay, most of them are just basic zombies. But another variation of the walking targets actually have a throwing arm. These guys will just stop moving once they caught sight of you and start throwing random debris at your vehicle. And trust me when I say this, if you get swamped by a horde, start boosting to get out of the way of those flying rocks. For faster infected, you can't look too far from the zombie dogs. These guys will run straight for your car and just try to bite right through your death machine. And the later missions love having large hordes of these things in open places. Finally, we have the large zombie. A slow, shambling monstrosity that, when in close proximity, will explode and deal a large amount of damage. You don't want to run into a large group of these guys because they will just chunk you for all that they're worth. Alright, gotta add extra notes here for the gameplay. While I was typing up the portion for how the graphics look, I got the grand idea to actually install the original. I'll need the first 2 levels, but it was enough for me to tell the difference between both versions. For one thing, there is no map key for the original, so you could easily get lost in it. The second is that right click was break. Nitro is a weapon you actually have to pick up. It's not a self-replenishing bar that you could just instantly fill up with the nitro pickups. Now, the graphics, they are very, very different. There's actual changes to the starting area on the first mission, and the game honestly looks both cleaner and grittier in the HD version. Also, the parts where the dialogue plays, the HD version actually has them as cutscenes, whereas in the original, you just go while the audio plays, or sometimes the audio doesn't actually play at all. And also, another big thing that I noticed was that there is a mini map in the HD version, so they really shouldn't have too many issues getting lost with the HD version. And that is Zombie Driver HD. And honestly, I think it's still worth it. It's fairly cheap at $10 on Steam, and it does go on sale pretty often. And yes, the game does have DLC. Just an extra slaughter map, an extra tournament, 2 more vehicles, and the Steam version has the Left 4 Dead van for Blood Race and Slaughter. If you have a Switch, the Immortal Edition comes with all the DLC included for about $15. In fact, the Switch version is on sale for half off until December 27th. If you're curious, Xor Studios even has a video of the development of Zombie Driver up to the release of the 360 version. It's actually really interesting to see just how much has changed. If there is one thing I would love to see from this franchise in the future, it's a sequel. I would love to see how the story for this game expands. I want to know more about how the other cities or the other countries would react to an even bigger plague. But who knows what they have planned for the title. Until next time, everyone. And when I figure out if I'm going to keep going with this review or see what the next game might be, I'll see all you guys next time. Later.